Welcome back. The Department of Homeland Security has now been shut down for 45 days, making it the longest partial government shutdown in U.S. history. And there's no end in sight. Both the House and the Senate are scheduled to be out of town for the next 2 weeks. Lawmakers left town on Friday after House Republicans rejected a unanimously passed Senate bill, which would have funded most of DHS except for ICE and Border Patrol. Instead, the House passed a short-term bill to fund the whole department. That bill has no viable path in the Senate. The gridlock is creating tensions within the Republican Party, even as Speaker of the House Mike Johnson says he gave his Senate counterpart Majority Leader John Thune a heads up about the vote.
I told him it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody that we would not be able to do that. We're not going to split apart two of the most important agencies in the government and leave them hanging like that. We just couldn't do it.
Do you still have confidence in him?
Yes.
Last week, President Trump expressed support for the Senate plan, but he seemed to change his tune last night when asked by my colleague Julie Tsirkin if he was caught off guard by the Senate vote. Take a listen.
It's a shame. They should really just go to a filibuster. They should terminate the filibuster, and they should vote. That's what I think. Look, I think the Senate is playing it too soft. The Republicans are wonderful people, but we're dealing with very sick individuals. The Democrats are sick. There's something wrong. They're like terrorists, and we have to protect our country.
Meanwhile, over the weekend, members in both chambers and on both sides of the aisle pointing fingers over who is to blame for the ongoing funding lapse.
You had the Senate, as you pointed out with Mr. Homan, pass a bipartisan bill unanimously in the United States Senate to say, look, let's fund everybody else and let's deal with this thorny issue about ICE. And then you had the Republican House say, hell no, we're not doing that.
The House stayed later than we were scheduled to stay to take up a bill to fully fund the department and sent it back over to the Senate. So the bill is over in the Senate. The Senate's got options. They've got to come back and deal with it.
For the Americans that are standing in line right now at the airports, know that that's because Speaker Johnson cared about his job more than what you are going through in your lives.
Let's be clear, whatever procedural differences we have between the House and the Senate, the reason we're at this impasse is that Democrats are using long TSA lines to throw a temper tantrum about deportations of violent, criminal, illegal aliens and funding of ICE and Border Patrol.
Joining me now is the aforementioned NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Julie Tsirkin, who was on Air Force One with the president last night. So, Julie, lawmakers, it seemed like they were getting optimistic at the end of last week that they could get a deal. Now it seems way more pessimistic that there's a path to open DHS. Is there any way this happens anytime soon?
Not from where I'm sitting. I certainly don't see a path forward. But you mentioned lawmakers going on recess. I think they could maybe get an earful at home, right? Like as they're flying into the airports, as they're seeing their constituents suffer, as they're potentially holding some town halls, maybe that could move the needle here. But as it stands right now, Leader Thune is still saying he's not going to bring his members home. Back to the Capitol. There's no reason to, because Senate Democrats are saying they're not going to vote for this thing. And now we find ourselves in the situation where, as you heard from the president there, even he said he doesn't like the Senate bill. So I think they're really in a jam here. Normally, to get out of shutdowns, we see those long lines doing their work to have Congress come back and actually agree to something. But since the president's paying those TSA workers, maybe that'll blunt some of that pressure. You know, it's interesting you make that point about whether or not Senator Thune would call them back. We see social media lighting up with all these covert photos of members of Congress in Las Vegas, Lindsey Graham at Disney World. TMZ has made it their personal mission to try and out all these guys for not being in Washington. The Speaker's approach to this has been, until I know we have something that can get 60 votes, it doesn't make any sense for them to be here. Is that a tenable position to take, given the outrage that so many Americans have that they're not here doing their job? Yeah, and Americans are dealing with these lines also on spring break, trying to travel. I spoke to a number of them in airports over the last 2 weeks. They say we might just cancel our plans altogether. And of course, the juxtaposition of members of Congress just living their lives, you mentioned Lindsey Graham and Disney, is certainly not helping out. I think it is completely untenable for Leader Thune to continue to say we're not going to call our members back. But call them back to do what? To make the situation worse? You know as well as I do that pressure really builds and works when there's a deadline and there's something for them to return to and really squeeze them on. I don't see it happening on this, but Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, said today she thinks members of Congress should head back. So maybe if the president puts some pressure on him. And
speaking of pressure from the president, I mean, you talked to him about this last night on Air Force One. He's been continuing to float this idea of using the filibuster to try and push this through without any Democrat support. The leader, Thune, has been very clear-eyed about this, that that's just not going to happen. There aren't 51 votes in the Senate to make that change. Does he seem to understand that, or does he still seem to think like his force of nature might be enough to convince them to go otherwise?
I think it's the latter, and I asked him in a follow-up specifically, do you still have confidence in Leader Thune? I mean, he says he can't get the votes to break the filibuster, and President Trump said, you know what, he told me that too, but that's part of the job of being a leader. He has to find the votes. And speaking of getting rid of the filibuster, you know, one tool they're talking about, Ryan, at least among Senate Republicans, is to fund all of DHS using reconciliation, so using that 51 vote threshold to get it done. That's going to be a tall order for them, too, and President Trump knows that. So the short answer of this is, unfortunately, for millions of Americans, there's still no solution in sight here. But one thing is very clear. The president last night said he won't sign a bill unless ICE funding is in it. We'll see if he changes his mind, but as of now, that's where he stands.
I mean, he's been all over the map on that. What's interesting, though, is President Trump's interpretation of leadership, right? His leadership model is, I'm going to tell you what to do, and you're going to do it because I'm the leader. Thune has a much different view of this, right? He is in charge of 53 other senators who were duly elected by their constituents. He's really not their boss. He has to reflect how they feel about it. That's a different form of leadership, isn't it?
It's a completely different form of leadership, and the Senate is so different than the House. These guys are running 6-year terms, right? In the House, they're running every 2 years. They're always on the campaign trail, essentially. So the Senate members have a different calculus than the House members do. I mean, the fact that they passed the bill without ICE funding unanimously should tell you everything you need to know. Any one of the Republican senators could have objected, and they didn't until the House did.
Including many of them that are on the internet complaining that no one objected. They could have done that too, right?
Right.
Senator Mike Lee. Julie, thank you so much.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.